Everyone thinks Dean Martin doesn't care. They watch him shrug off insults. They watch him walk away from arguments with that lazy smile. They watch him hold a glass of bourbon or what looks like bourbon and act like nothing in this world can touch him. They think he walks away from his marriage the same way. They're wrong. December 10, 1969, Bel Air, California, 2:47 a.m. Dean Martin sits in his study. The house is silent. Jeanne is upstairs. The divorce papers are on his desk. He hasn't signed them yet. His hand moves to his wedding ring, twists it once, twice. He's worn it for 20 years, through every movie, every show, every Vegas night. He doesn't take it off. Tomorrow reporters will ask why he filed, why he didn't let Jeanne file, like a gentleman would. Dean will say something that sounds like a joke. It won't be a joke. What Dean Martin whispers to Jeanne that night, the last night they spend under the same roof, will explain everything. The real reason he's destroying his own marriage. Jeanne keeps it secret for 26 years, until Dean is dying. To understand why Dean Martin destroys his own marriage, you have to go back to the beginning. New Year's Eve 1948. The Beachcomber Club, Miami. Jeanne Beager is 21. Orange Bowl queen, a model from Florida who has never heard of Dean Martin or Jerry Lewis. She comes because her friends drag her there. She stays because of the man on stage. We locked eyes, she would say 50 years later. And I knew, we just fell madly in love. That's amor. 7 months later, September 1, 1949, they marry in Beverly Hills. Jerry Lewis is best man. Dean is 32. Jeanne is 22. They don't know what they're getting into. They don't care. For 20 years, they are Hollywood's perfect couple. 3 children together. Dean Paul in 1951, Ritri in 1953, Gina in 1956. And Jeanne does something remarkable. She raises Dean's 4 children from his first marriage as her own. No difference. No stepmother distance. 7 kids, 1 woman holding it all together. Jeanne didn't marry Dean Martin the star. She married Dino Crosetti from Steubenville, the man behind the mask, the man who couldn't speak English until he was 5, the man who still sent money home to his mother every month without telling anyone. She thought she could keep him. Rosario Benedetti started working for the Martins in 1952. She watched those children grow. She watched Dean become the biggest star on television. She watched something else too. She watched Dino disappear. Mr. Martin was home every night in the early years, Rosario would say later. He'd sit at the kitchen table with Mrs. Martin after the children went to bed. They'd talk for hours, about nothing, about everything. She paused. Then the TV show started. Then Vegas. Then he wasn't home at all. And when he was home, he wasn't really there. By 1968, Dean's chair at Sunday dinner sat empty more often than not. He's working, Jeanne would tell the children. The children were old enough to read newspapers. They knew where their father was. Vegas, Palm Springs, somewhere with Frank and Sammy, somewhere that wasn't here. And Jeanne stopped setting his place at the table. The silence started in 1967. Not arguments. That would have meant they still cared enough to fight. Instead, they became polite. Good morning, Dean. Good morning, Jeanne. Like strangers sharing a hotel lobby. Rosario noticed first. When they stopped fighting, she would say years later, that's when I knew the marriage was over. Dean Martin had built walls his entire life. In Steubenville, his father Guy Crocetti worked 12-hour days at the barber shop. He didn't tell his wife he loved her, not with words. He showed it by coming home every night. Dean learned that love was something you do, not something you say. The problem was simple. By 1969, Dean wasn't coming home, and he couldn't find the words. The TV show consumed him. 40 million viewers every Thursday, Vegas every weekend, movies in summer. He was everywhere except the one place that mattered. Jeanne waited. She had always waited, for the tour to end, for the season to wrap, for the movie to finish. She waited for Dino to come back. The man who came home wasn't the man she married. The Sands Hotel, Las Vegas. Saturday nights, Dean would finish his second show at 2 a.m., then sit at the bar until sunrise. Frank was usually there. Sammy too. They'd laugh and drink and pretend the sun wasn't coming up. Dean wasn't laughing. Not really. Marcus Webb had been Dean's driver for 6 years. He picked him up every Sunday morning from the Sands, drove him to the airport, watched him fly home to Jeanne. Mr. Martin didn't talk on those drives, Marcus remembered. He just stared out the window. Sometimes he'd take out his wallet, look at a photograph. His family, all 9 of them lined up on the lawn. Marcus paused. One morning I asked him why he didn't just stay home, skip Vegas, be with his kids. What did he say? He said, because I don't know who I am when I'm there, pal. At least here I know the act. That was the problem. Dean Martin had become a character, a persona, the drunk who wasn't drunk, the lover who couldn't love, the man who didn't care about anything. He'd played the role so long he'd forgotten it was a role, and Jeanne was tired of waiting for the real man to come home. November 1969, Thanksgiving, all 7 children around the table. Dean was there physically. Halfway through the meal, he excused himself. Phone call, business. He didn't come back for 2 hours. When he returned, Jeanne was washing dishes alone. The children had gone to bed. Dean stood in the doorway. His fingers drummed against the frame. He opened his mouth to speak. "Don't," Jeanne said. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders were rigid. "Whatever you're going to say, don't." Dean's jaw tightened. He stood there for 47 seconds. Then he walked away. He slept in the guest room that night, the first of many, and then came the announcement. 2 weeks later, Jeanne told the press they were separating. Dean hadn't signed anything yet. He was waiting, and nobody knew why. December 10, 1969, 11:47 p.m. Dean comes home to find suitcases on the bed. 3 of them, open. His suits, his shoes, his records. 24 years, folded into leather bags. Jeanne is sitting in the corner chair. She hasn't been crying. Her eyes are dry, steady. "That's worse. I thought you'd want to pack yourself," she says. "I couldn't wait anymore." Dean doesn't respond. He walks to his study. Jeanne follows. The divorce papers are where he left them, unsigned. He's been staring at them for weeks. "The lawyers called," Jeanne says. "They want to know why you're stalling." Dean pours himself a drink. Apple juice. Jeanne knows the truth about the bourbon. His hand trembles slightly, just enough for her to notice. "I'm not stalling." "Then sign them." He doesn't move. Jeanne's voice drops. "Why are you doing this, Dino? After everything. Why are you the one filing?" Dean looks at the wedding photo on his desk. September 4, 1949. 2 kids who didn't know anything about Hollywood, about fame, about the cost. "Because you deserve better," he says quietly. "And if I let you file, you'll talk yourself out of it. You'll forgive me. Again. Maybe I want to forgive you. I know." His voice cracks. "Barely. That's why I can't let you." Jeanne stands, walks toward him, stops 3 feet away. 24 years, Dean, 7 children, and you're just going to throw it away because you're too proud to ask for help? Dean's fingers curled around the glass. His knuckles whitened. "It isn't pride, honey." "Then what is it?" He didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a photograph. Not their wedding photo. Something older. Faded. A woman standing in front of a barbershop in Stonebenville. His mother. Angela Crocetti. Pop told her he loved her once, Dean said quietly. Once in 40 years. On their wedding day. After that, nothing. She knew. He knew she knew. That was enough for them. He set the photograph down. "I thought I'd be different. I thought because I could sing love songs I could say the words. I can't. I'm his son, Jeanne. I'm built the same way." Jeanne's breath caught. She hadn't seen this. In 24 years, she hadn't seen him like this. "You're a coward, Dean Martin. You'd rather blow up your own life than admit you need someone." Dean's mask didn't slip. It shattered. His shoulders dropped. His breath caught. For one moment, maybe 3 seconds, Jeanne saw the boy from Steubenville, the kid who couldn't speak English until he was 5, the teenager who fought in boxing rings because he didn't have words. "I don't know how to love you," he whispered. "Not the way you need. I didn't know how then. I don't know how now." Jeanne's hand moved toward his face, stopped, fell. "You could have learned." "No." Dean shook his head, his lips pressed together. "That's the thing, honey. Some men aren't built for it." They stood there in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a car passed on the empty street. Somewhere in the house, a child coughed in their sleep. 24 years. 3 children. 1,000 Sunday dinners. And it came down to this. 2 people standing 3 feet apart, unable to close the distance. Dean picked up the pen. His hand didn't shake anymore. He signed. The next morning, reporters surrounded Dean outside the courthouse. "Mr. Martin, why didn't you let your wife file? Isn't that the gentlemanly thing?" Dean stopped, lit a cigarette, took a long drag. "I know it's the gentlemanly thing to let the wife file." He exhaled. "I'm no gentleman. I just played one on TV." The reporters laughed. They thought it was a joke. It wasn't. The divorce finalized in 1973. 4 years of lawyers. 4 years of negotiations. Jeanne got the house. Dean got visitation whenever he wanted. Neither got what they really wanted, each other. Within a month, Dean married Catherine Hahn, a 26-year-old receptionist from a Beverly Hills hair salon. He was 55. The newspapers called him a playboy, a man trading his wife for a younger model. Rosario saw something different. She still cleaned Dean's new house once a week. He insisted. Paid her double. The house was always dark, she remembered. Mr. Martin would sit in the living room watching old movies. His old movies. The ones where Mrs. Martin was at the premieres. He kept every photograph, every letter, every card she'd ever given him. Catherine noticed. She couldn't help noticing. The way Dean's eyes lingered on those photographs. The way he said Jeanne's name. Not with anger, with something worse. Longing. He was looking for something, Jeanne would say later. I don't think he knew what. It wasn't Catherine. The marriage lasted 3 years. Catherine filed for divorce in 1976. And then Dean did something nobody expected. He called Jeanne. Not to talk about the children. Not to discuss lawyers or money or schedules. Just to talk, like they used to, before the TV show, before Vegas, before everything fell apart. Dean and Jeanne spotted at dinner. Dean and Jeanne at their grandson's birthday party. Dean and Jeanne sitting together at Dean Paul's Air National Guard ceremony, laughing like the past 7 years hadn't happened. Are you remarrying? A reporter asked Dean outside the restaurant. Dean smiled, that lazy familiar smile. We're just two friends having dinner, pal. Friends don't look at each other the way Dean looked at Jeanne. Here's what nobody knew. Dean called Jeanne every Sunday after the divorce. Every single Sunday. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes 5 minutes. He'd tell her about his week. She'd tell him about the grandchildren. They'd sit in silence on the phone, just breathing, just being there. For 22 years, without missing a single Sunday. She'd come to his house, make pasta the way his mother used to make it, sit with him while he watched golf on television. They didn't remarry. We were better as friends, Jeanne explained. The love was still there. The damage was done. The world thought the story was over. Dean had moved on. New life, new chapter. Ain't that a kick in the head? March 21, 1987. Dean Paul Martin, their firstborn, dead at 35. His F-4 Phantom crashed into San Gorgonio Mountain during a California Air National Guard training flight. Dean got the call backstage, mid-tour with Frank and Sammy, the Together Again tour. He walked off stage and didn't come back. The search for the wreckage took 6 days. 6 days of waiting. 6 days of hoping that somehow, impossibly, Dean Paul had survived. He hadn't. When they finally recovered the body, Dean was already broken. He'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped pretending. Jeanne came to him, not as an ex-wife, as the only person who understood. At the funeral she reached for his hand. She felt the ring, the same ring from 1949. His spine went rigid. His breath stopped. I stopped being a good husband, he said. I didn't stop being your husband. After Dean Paul's death, Dean retreated from the world. He quit the Together Again tour. Frank was furious. Dean didn't care. He stopped performing, stopped seeing friends, stopped answering the phone, except on Sundays. Sundays he always answered. Because Sundays Jeanne called. She visited every week, brought food he wouldn't eat, watched television shows he didn't care about, sat in comfortable silence, the kind only people who've known each other for 50 years can share. He wasn't the same after Dean Paul, Rosario said. The light went out. When Mrs. Martin came to visit, you could see something flicker. Just a little, just enough to know he was still in there somewhere. In 1993, a reporter asked Dean about his love life. I'm going to marry Jeanne again, he said. The reporter laughed. Surely he was joking. Dean Martin was always joking. Dean wasn't smiling. Dean Martin died in his Bel Air home. Respiratory failure. Years of smoking. A body that had finally quit. Jeanne was there. She held his hand as he took his last breath. On his finger, the wedding ring. On his nightstand, a photograph from 1949. 2 kids at a wedding in Beverly Hills. Before the fame, before the fall, before everything. Rosario Benedetti attended the funeral. When a reporter asked about the Martins' marriage, she said only this. Everyone talks about Mr. Martin's talent, his voice, his women. You want to know who he really was? Look at that ring. 46 years. Through the divorce. Through the other marriage. Through everything. He didn't take it off. Not once. We all hurt the people we love most. Not because we want to, because we don't know how to love them right. Dean Martin loved Jeanne Bigger for 46 years. He couldn't figure out how to show it. We all think we have time. Time to fix things. Time to say the words. Time to become the person we should have been. Dean thought he had time too. He didn't. We all want love stories with happy endings. The couple that stays together. The marriage that lasts. Some love stories are messier. Some include divorce papers and 20 years apart, and phone calls every Sunday that don't quite say what they mean. 22 years. Every Sunday. Without fail. That's how Jeanne knew. She lived until 2016. When people asked about Dean, she always said the same thing. He was the love of my life. We couldn't figure out how to live it together. She paused. He called every Sunday. For 22 years. She smiled. That's amor.